Hi, welcome to Jeremy Pryor's podcast, or what I like to call Jeremy Pryor Unfiltered. I'm his daughter and producer, Kelsey Gall, and we are excited to bring you seasons of content all the way from Tolkien to theology, from business to family. If you like to contemplate deep philosophical ideas across a wide range of topics, you've come to the right place. Make sure you give us a follow so you don't miss out on future episodes.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm here with my lovely wife, April. How's it going, April?
Hello.
We just celebrated Christmas, like I'm sure many of the rest of y'all did.
Yes. We also celebrated our son getting married.
Yes, we double win this year.
A week apart.
Yeah, so busy. And so we did 12 days of Christmas and a wedding. And now we're doing lots of extra Christmas Eve celebrating / kind of have this weird limbo week that happens between Christmas and New Year's. Never quite know what to do this week. Trying to get a little bit done.
Wow.
April, what was I'm curious what, like, of a moment or a tradition this Christmas that you found particularly meaningful this year?
Well, something we started last year, so this is the second year we've done it, is what we call a shepherd's dinner. And it happens to be what we do on Christmas Eve, just the last 2 years. And that has been really impactful for me. What we do is we like push back all our furniture and have a fire going in the fireplace and put out a tablecloth on the floor and eat our dinner there. We make shepherd's pie and have our dinner on the floor with the lights turned off and a couple candles in the fire, and read the passage. Is it the Matthew passage of the
Luke
Christmas?
2. Yeah, the shepherd's passage.
The Luke 2?
Yeah.
Okay, the Luke passage about that really focuses on things from the shepherd's perspective. And that has been really great because it's so it helps you imagine when you're sitting on the ground and you're not super comfortable and eating your food, and it feels like it's dark, so it feels like it's nighttime, and then just imagining. And then Jeremy will play um, a song. What is it? Is it Handel's Messiah? One of the
No, it's from, I think it's John Michael Talbot's. It's called The Birth of Jesus, but it ends with this angelic choral, just incredible. And we have quite a sound system in there, so we crank it.
You're like surrounded by this choral music that sounds like the choir of angels.
Yeah.
And like we're in it. And so it's just really experiential and really powerful. So we've done it twice now. I really like it. And I can see, we don't have any young children right now, but I can imagine young children that being really impactful. I don't know how they would sit on the floor and eat their food without making a total mess, but I still think it's really cool.
Yeah. So good. Yeah, I really enjoyed just getting to plan. So we tried to do 12 days of Christmas last year. We didn't have a wedding to contend with, so we just did 12 days in a row. And I remember it got a little bit exhausting. And I was looking at this year, I was like, we literally can't do it because there's a wedding, 10 days before Christmas, and we've got all the preparation for that. So this year, when I was designing our 12 days, I just picked 12 days that I knew we were just going to be home chilling between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And then we just call different themes and put different kids in charge of different things and had, various activities or whatever. And then a passage associated with each one. That was a lot of fun this year. So I definitely like that a lot better. Not doing 12 days in a row. So regardless of whether or not we'll have another wedding next Christmas, we will be spreading that out. That's
I like that a lot.
Yeah. It also kind of takes a lot of the pressure off of, I think sometimes it's just, there's one giant Christmas day and you're like, did I miss it? Did I experience it? Did I?
Right.
This is part of the reason why I think, Western people have a little bit of a trouble understanding that the nature of a festival. A festival is almost designed to have this slow build to it. Because in this, mostly celebrating the festival of Sukkot, like it builds towards the final day. And I love that trying to bring that into Christmas. And I've also really wanted to figure out how to do that in the spring holidays. So we'll see if I have the creative energy to try to upgrade those this year.
Yeah. Yeah. That's all.
2024. Awesome, guys. Well, we're going to look at another section of my book. This one's called How Households Rule Over the Land. So there's a little picture of me, at least on my Substack, doing a rototiller with April's dad in the background. This was his rototiller. He was training
You
me.
look so determined.
What's that?
You look so determined.
Yes. I think he looks really proud. He's like, look at my son-in-law. He's stewarding land.
Yes.
Never thought he would do it. I'm not exactly the most handy person. So we owned 6 acres back then, and I found it incredibly challenging to rule over that much land. Someday I'm getting better at it. Also got my sweet cargo pants on there, man.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to read this to you guys, and then April, I'm going to get your reaction. How households rule over the land. This is from chapter 2 of my yet to be published book, The Ruling Household. Guard and cultivate. Quote, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. Genesis 2:15. Why did God create man? What is his unique God-given assignment? He was given territory and then told to cultivate and guard the land he was given. This is a direct parallel to the commands given in the first chapters of Genesis. He cannot be told to be fruitful and multiply, since no woman was given to the man, but he can subdue, fill, and rule. We're given a concrete picture of what that looks like as Adam cultivates the garden and takes responsibility for watching over it. Every man must know the borders of his garden. When the nation of Israel was brought into the promised land, each family was given a plot of land. Each family knew the borders of their land. Everything within those borders was fully their responsibility. Men learned wisdom by leading their families to work their land. Observing how different fathers ruled their land was how Solomon showed his son what wisdom looked like. This is from Proverbs 24. I passed by the field of a sluggard, by the vineyard of a man lacking sense, and behold, it was all overgrown with thorns. The ground was covered with nettles, and its stone wall was broken down. Then I saw and considered it. I looked and received instruction. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. The way God disciples a father is through his land. The way we discover the character of a man or men in our life is by observing what is under his dominion. Quote, he must manage his own household well. 1 Timothy 3:4. This is why, by the way, I don't like HOAs, homeowner associations. HOAs seek to protect the value of each house in the neighborhood by enforcing common rules and standards. But imagine if I could walk around the neighborhood with my son and stand in front of every house, and he could learn about the man inside simply by looking at his garden, his yard, his animals, his family, and the state of his house. I'd be willing to take a hit on home value to gain that kind of wisdom. We live near Amish country. A few times a year, we drive through these fields, and it's a shocking experience to see one field after another cultivated in meticulous detail, despite the lack of many modern technologies used only to turn a corner and see a street with an old trailer covered in overgrown weeds, yards filled with broken down cars to be greeted by a gang of aggressive, half-starved dogs. This is a living proverb about wisdom, manhood, and stewardship. These fields tell stories. Whoever has ears to hear, let them hear. Establish clear borders. Can you draw the boundary lines around your area of responsibility? Borders exist to teach us wisdom. They tell us where foolishness ends and wisdom begins. That's why the property lines must be clear. Our enemy hates borders because he doesn't want us to learn wisdom. It starts small. A boy is given a body to rule over. He's given a bed, eventually a room. As he grows into manhood, his territory expands. He's given more and more power over his time, his decisions, and his network of relationships. God then may give him the gift of a spouse, children, a house, a business, a ministry. Clearly mark off the borders. Learn the precise perimeter under your rule. Hear the words of Genesis that the Lord God has placed you in a garden to cultivate and guard it. Feel the weight of responsibility on your shoulders to live worthy of the size and scope of your territory. Don't seek to rule over a square inch more than you can guard and cultivate. Once I got way over my head, I purchased a 6-acre plot, and like Adam before me, I failed to properly cultivate the land. I lacked the skills, the time, the money, or the characters to subdue, fill, and rule a plot of land of that size. I sold it to a friend who has done an amazing job of cultivating every square inch of that land. I purchased a much smaller plot of ground, and while I struggle every week to keep up with all that this land requires, it feels like just the right size for me and my family. We find it challenging, but not overwhelming. I've had to accept the fact that for me, it's better to have less physical land because most of the territory God has given me to oversee is abstract. My territory includes businesses, ministries, and lots of relationships. I often have my hands full. And so with these themes, I want to give you guys this tool: walk the perimeter. We live in a day that champions rights and ignores responsibility. We want to declare our rights over what belongs to us. This is my room, my phone, my car, my business, my kids, my house, my vote. But every declaration of ownership comes with the responsibility to steward what belongs to us. Stewardship requires vision, cultivation, and management. Fail at any of those steps, and it may be a blessing to lose stewardship over those things that currently belong to you. We should only desire to own the things we can properly steward. A practical way to practice this is when you own a house, regularly walk the perimeter. This is the first step in training in what it means to fill, subdue, and rule. As you walk the perimeter of your land, try and see a vision for every square inch of the land you've been given. When you can envision the purpose of the land, then begin to fill the space. Push your vision to the boundaries of your stewardship. As you fill the land with your vision, it's time to get your hands dirty. Cultivate the land to bring it into alignment with your vision. Enjoy the process. Seeing something go from raw potential to cultivated beauty, order, and purpose is one of the greatest joys of being a father and leading a family. After you've subdued the land, then walk the perimeter in order to ensure everything in your domain continues to serve its envisioned purpose. We envision to fill the land. We cultivate to subdue the land. We manage to rule over the land. And this filling, subduing, and ruling happens over all that you own and steward: every room, every dollar, every technology, every asset, and over your family as a whole. If your family controls something and year after year you have no vision for its purpose, or you lack the skill, energy, or time to rule over it, then let it go. Let another more capable family take ownership of that asset. I was having coffee with a wealthy venture capitalist in Jerusalem several years ago. He told me he was leaving our meeting to work his olive orchard that afternoon, and he told me why. If I don't work my field, God will take it away from me, and he should. Every square inch of Israel is contested land, where there's been a continual fight over who has rights to the land. This man's answer was simple: God will give the land to those families who will properly steward it. So as I walk the perimeter of my land, I often ask, could another man's family steward this land better than my family can? Our family manages a small real estate portfolio. My daughter, Kelsey, manages the properties. My son, Jackson, does renovations and maintenance. My wife, April, does bookkeeping and financing. I find deals and manage the business. I'd love to grow our portfolio, but I feel challenged every week with the reality that I should only seek to acquire additional property if I properly rule over what I already own. It's not about owning as much as you can, but about stewarding well what you've already been given. And, quote, it is required in stewards that one be found faithful. 1 Corinthians 4:2. So, April. Yeah, any details in that kind of stand out to you?
That's a lot. You covered a lot of territory there. Um, I think one thing it reminded me of was the podcast episode you did a while ago with Ryan MG called something like Boundaries,
Oh, about borders. Yep. Mhm.
Borders and Boundaries. Yeah. And I think about that a lot because that podcast actually helped me kind of like solidify some things about what I believe about that. And I think, you know, um, borders and boundaries have I feel like they're becoming dangerous words, a society. Everything that's happening with the southern country and the f- the two sides of it are, it's surprised to on one hand that people would contest that we have a border for our country and part of what you say and that what you and Ryan kind of hash out in that podcast is the different like being able to have a border of some kind and then be able to look at the thing on the other side of and say like this is what happens when these borders are very clear and they certain lifestyles, certain choices, certain decisions, certain values are being played out within those borders. And then you can like peek in those borders and see, like, oh, this is how that culture, this is how that family, this is how that mindset plays out. So I think that when it comes to stewarding, like you were talking about, like walking around a neighborhood and being able to see like, in the lack of an HOA, you have a street of houses and you can see like, oh, this one's managed very well. Oh, this one, their trash barrel is always at the end of their driveway, no matter if it's trash day or not, or whatever the thing is. And I think that, you can err on the side of like, some people might think that, oh, you're so judgmental or that's judging, but it's like you're observing the fruit of the way someone's been living. And I think that we need to be okay with observing those fruits and learning from. Because, like you said, when we go to the Amish country, we can observe, wow, these this yard is pristine. I love like their flower bushes are all like blooming. They have very clear, like a beautiful fence around their garden and those rows are straight and, things like that, their clothesline has clothes on it and waving in the breeze. And so you can just observe people's lifestyle just by driving down the street. And so I think that is valuable. And then just, then there's the whole topic of stewardship, which you touch on at the end. That's just like a huge topic of how to steward the land, how to steward what you have starting as a child. We can teach our kids how to steward a toy or how to steward their bedroom or how to steward their spot at the table or something like that, where they have to learn how to like wipe up after themselves or, keep it clean or whatever. So that's a really big topic. I don't know if you have any more like specific things, but
The Family Plan Calendar is the new way to keep your family team organized. Plan your rhythms, menu, household chores, and notes for the family all in one place. Visit familyteams.com to purchase.
Yeah. Well, I think that it is an interesting day in which we live. I don't think that the conversation around territory has been framed properly. Like
Mhm.
it's primarily been framed around rights, and so there's an obsession with the rights and a simultaneous diminution of the role of responsibility. And I think because of that, people are not getting wisdom from looking at territory and the borders of territory because they're primarily looking at that in considering rights. I remember a very controversial conversation happened maybe 8 months ago or something between Piers Morgan and Andrew Tate.
Mhm.
Yeah. Piers Morgan spent like, you know, several minutes trying to get Andrew Tate to denounce the Taliban for not allowing children or girls. Uh, that they had just recently decided that they were not going to allow women to be educated in Afghanistan.
Oh,
And it seemed like the most obvious thing in the world to say, of course, that's wrong. I mean, that's wrong in every way that you could imagine a Western individual would think. And he really didn't want to talk about whether or not it was right or wrong. He did because he's a Muslim, but part of what he was saying is we have to look at our own problems. Um and so part of what this perspective brings is I have my set of ideas and my beliefs about rights and freedoms and everything that I think make the most sense. But I have to give a huge vote to reality. I have to actually look at the territory and say, is what's happening there positive? And so when you actually turn that gaze on the United States and say, are the women in our culture thriving? Are our
Mm.
daughters doing amazing? Like, when you go inside the borders of of women today, like, how are they doing? And because when you only focus on rights, you don't actually gauge that properly. And there's all kinds of statistics that are suggesting that there is a enormous problem going on with both sons and daughters in our culture. I mean, we have there are cancers or destructive influences within the borders of our territory in the West, and things are going terribly wrong. But because we're only asking, um, how do you maximize individual rights and freedoms, and not actually looking at, uh, like, there's lots of laboratories out there. We could look at this border. Like, here's a culture where their divorce rate's less than 5%. Maybe we should look at
Mm.
what's going on there. Here's a culture where the women are generally happy and content and enjoy their lives. What's going on there? We're not, we can't any longer look at these laboratories because we're no longer interested in the wisdom that comes from borders. And that's why I think it was Dennis Prager I first heard say um, that borders exist to show you where bad ideas end and good ideas begin.
Mm.
I think there's many good ideas in the West, but we have a lot of bad ideas too. And so that's kind of the big giant geopolitical reality. And I know Ryan and I did talk about that quite a bit, and I think it's so important. But I think that as a family or a household listening to this, I find that whatever energy we're spending trying to, imagine what a better state, a better nation, a better city might look like, we've got to like walk around our houses. Let's walk around and again, like being really honest. Like there have been times where like I feel like my ideas are the best. But I look at my yard and I look at that yard and I'm like, there's something I'm doing wrong. Like, I'm trying
Mhm.
to grow vegetables and they're not growing. I'm trying to help my children thrive and they're not thriving. I'm trying to create an environment where people want to come and be relaxed, but they're not coming and being relaxed. Like constantly asking this question, like, what am I missing? What am I forgetting? How am I stewarding this land? How am I stewarding my leadership over like, and this is where I just love the idea of the sovereignty of a family over land. And I know it's terrifying because there are people out there that will take horrible advantage of that. But I think that if you were to take a big step back and actually look at the big picture, a society and many, many more children will flourish in a world in which everyone holds families accountable for being sovereign over their own land, their own family. What happens when we start abdicating that to the government is that more and more fathers start to release that responsibility. And they're like, I guess I'm not the one stewarding this land. I was just reading an article today about in China, they have this thing called like a social credit score. And so if you, for example, play a video game, you get docked points for being an idle citizen.
Oh,
Or
wow.
you, they basically are creating a monoculture by using social credit scores to, to figure out what you're doing and make the model citizen. It's really saying there's one household in China and there's one father who's the head of the Chinese Communist Party. And I'm a huge fan of communism when done at the family level. It's the most apocalyptic nightmare at the national level,
Yeah.
and these ideas have to be done at the proper scale. And a father can know every one of his children, and so he's going to share so much with them. That's the beauty of communism, and
Mhm.
he's also going to enforce a culture over them, which is appropriate. And there's going to come a time where they can decide if they want to continue to participate in that culture or not. So there's a voluntary element that he knows is coming, and that holds him accountable as well. But those borders, I think, are really important for figuring out how that all works.
Yeah, I agree.
So what?
But it also helps you know, like, what to reinforce too when you're trying to establish those boundaries.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's a trying to understand what is that. That's why having a vision for the land. This is the whole idea of walking the perimeter. Is you have to take time when you steward something to spend time envisioning. And I think the physical act of walking around the perimeter or walking around your house. I'm curious, April, how do you experience that? Because as as a wife and mother, you're walking all the time. I'm sure that you're having reactions as you walk around the house, every day and think, oh, what can we do? Like one of the things we practice every week is at our meeting. I always ask April, what's something broken about our household? What are you noticing? And you always seem to have noticed something that could be improved, like your sensitivity meters high as you're just going about your day. How do you
Yeah.
experience that?
Well, it's been different at different seasons of our life because, our household has been there are different things, activities and so forth have happened in our household through the years. The seasons change. So now I don't have little kids. I'm not sweeping the kitchen floor 3 times a day. Maybe once a week I'm sweeping my kitchen floor. It's shocking. It is really shocking. Um, but I think the what my heart does when I'm walking around our house, sometimes I'm literally walking around with a whiteboard and because I forget, I'm like, "Oh, this needs to be done, this needs to be done, this needs to be done, this needs to," I somehow missed that, and I'm making up a chore list for the kids or something like that. Um, and sometimes start to get confused about a room. Like, how are we using this room? This isn't It's like we're not really in that season anymore, and so I might talk to Jeremy about, like, a shift that we wanna make in the way we use this room or something like that. Um, but I also think that there's just this, ownership over it. I think sometimes I see spots in our house and I wanna, like, close my eyes and cringe and, like, walk right past it. And honestly, in those moments, what I have to do with the Lord is I have to just say his name. Sometimes when I walk past a whole section that just makes me feel so frustrated, it's like what I'm describing is maybe like a whole section of clutter or a project that I've been meaning to do for months and it just keeps getting put off and it's still sitting there. And this idea that I had that I still really want to do and I still love the idea, I just haven't executed on it yet. And so I can get this like almost like this shame or this like self, I don't know if it's as far as self-hatred, but like some version of just like annoyed with myself and frustrated that I'm living the kind of life that makes it so that I can't finish these projects or approach this pile. And so I have to just like, Lord, help me put that pile in the right priority in the right list. Like, does it matter right now? It might not even matter right now. Or maybe I'm being lazy, or maybe I'm afraid to take that next step because it's going to require something relationally difficult for me to do or something like that. And so sometimes I have to really work through why that pile is bothering me so much or why I haven't attacked that project or things like that. And they can get down to like a root of something going on inside of me. Sometimes it's just the pile that just hasn't gotten done and there's nothing beyond that. But so there's just all kinds of things that happen to me when I walk the perimeter. I'm usually walking the perimeter inside um, of my house and on the different, first floor, second floor, basement. So, um, just being aware of knowing where things are, of owning like the level up, the levels, the way you can level up your house from like room to room or section in the room to section in the room. You can level those things up. You can steward your utensil drawer better. That's one thing that's really bugging me right now is there's not enough room for all our spatulas or something like that. So, just little things like that that help a household run smoothly. To be able to want your household to run like the hum of a household running smoothly, it takes a lot of work and a lot of intentionality and a lot of attention. And if your attentions are focused elsewhere, it can be really, it's easy to shove your perimeter and your household like off to the side. But believing that this is one of my top priorities is stewarding our household well. And I'm not just talking about the physical space, I'm talking about what's going on in the hearts around me that because oftentimes what we see in the physical space is revealing something that's going on in someone else's heart. Like, oh, you left this plate here again. And so it reveals to me that you think I'm your servant or that you would be doing me a favor to clear your plate. And so then that just opens everything up to have a conversation about stewardship and about how the household needs you to clear this plate, not just mom and that kind of thing. So anyway, I think that the perimeter thing is a perimeter of the physical space, but also can reveal a lot about the hearts that we're also stewarding.
Yeah. That's really good. I think that, one of the ways that I've wrestled this year with this concept is in our real estate investing.
Mm.
I know I decided, like, when we originally started buying properties, I was like reading all these books about how it's important to distance yourself from your tenants. You don't know what's going to happen. We had to do an eviction this year, which was really frustrating and, lame for everyone. So you kind of want to create that space. And anyway, I remember thinking this year, as our daughter Kelsey is managing, I'm like, I want to inspect every property, make sure that I'm there and meeting our tenants. And part of it was just coming out of this desire and this question: what does good stewardship look like over these properties? Because I think that there's sort of a notorious landlord kind of culture, which is, give as little as you possibly can to the property and extract as much value as you possibly can. And there's certainly, that's where the economics incentives are really, sort of bent that direction. But I also think that there's a reality to the fact that, you're really impacting people's lives, and you need to know the state of your property. And ultimately, if you let certain things go, then you are going to end up paying the price, as the person ultimately responsible. So I think everything in your life, and I keep thinking about, there's almost this obsessive drive for more and more. I wish I could own more. And,
Mm.
this is where, like, it's so confusing. I think that one of the proverbs talk about how it's much better to get wealthy little by little than to get a sudden amount of wealth, because you are forced, when you're building up assets slowly and really, you're really learning stewardship. You're really understanding those dynamics. The whole reason why we have things to steward isn't so that we can, become super wealthy. It's really so that we can be discipled, like we can grow up. And as our kids are getting engaged in, this process, they're just beginning that character formation process of what does it mean to steward things and build assets that produce income, and how do you make sure that you're properly addressing those things. And I know that I kind of, when I first started getting involved in business, the phrase passive income was like the buzz. I mean, that's, everything was about passive, 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 which is ironic.
Yeah.
Like, passivity is really the root of the sin of Adam.
Mm.
And I think that that being the driving force behind asset development is to be as passive as possible. No, the question is, how can you maximize your stewardship? And yeah, there's ways to do that are way too active and overwhelming and end up burning you out. And then there's ways that you can be neglectful. And there's a sweet spot. And it's really finding that sweet spot where you are actively making sure that the things that are under your care and under your stewardship, the land that God's given you, that it's better off under your care than other people. I like that as a way of really kind of a criteria for judging if I can continue to expand. If at that point I'm like, you know what, somebody else would do a better job with this. We just sold a property that we thought we were going to own for a long time. And I think we did come to the place where, like, this is a really challenging property to steward. And there are people just chomping at the bit to own this property that want to own it and steward it. And they're going to do a better job than we'll do as landlords and as renters. And we're like, let's release that. And then the same week we were choosing to do that, another property became available that was being very poorly stewarded. And we're like, oh, let's buy that. Like, that needs our help. I think we could do a way better job of stewarding that property than has been done. And so, yeah, I think you have to factor in stewardship and responsibility, not just rights and ownership. Like, these things are combined, and we have to keep them closely tied together.
Yeah.
Cool.
Agreed. Awesome.
Well, thanks, April. Thank you guys for listening. And yeah, I'm enjoying kind of just stepping through the book and getting to kind of process all these different principles. So thanks y'all for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you later, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Jeremy Pryor's podcast. Make sure you hit that follow button so you don't miss out on any future content. Follow Jeremy on Twitter and Instagram, as well as his Substack blog, all linked in the description. See you next time.